Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Coffee with Derek and Craig. Going to have some metal detecting talk today, just generally across the board. Stuff that some of the stuff we've been finding and stuff like that. And sorry about Saturday night, guys. I scheduled way too much stuff for myself to get done before the show. I had to make some run to Orlando and take care of some stuff for the VFW post and. I didn't make it back. I texted Craig. I said, I don't think I'm going to make it back unless I'm doing 120 mile an hour, and I'm not going to do that. So, yeah, I know better next time. But I've been going, Craig, all day long Saturday, and I just noticed this morning when I got the show up and running, we got some of the levels might be kind of strange. I have to look at it later, but I did an software update, and well, you know how that goes. Sometimes it changes stuff around a little bit, so. If we're not as clear, or maybe we're clearer, I don't know. It seems like it's okay right now, so kind of go with it. But excuse me, Craig just did some hunting the other day, and I was kind of laughing anyways that Craig posted up some photos and stuff of the stuff he found in the yard, and one of them was a lantern part, and then the other thing was a part of a harmonica reed, and I found. Not the same ones, but same kind of thing. But harmonica reed, I found part of it, and I found a little bit more of a lantern part than he did, but it's a different era. I thought it was funny, Craig, and we're finding the same stuff in two different states, the same day, just about. Yeah, you want to tell them about that that 15 kilohertz that you tried out? I thought that was interesting. It's a good. Middle line frequency. It seems like between several of the detectors I've been using, between 13 and 16 hertz, or kilohertz, whatever. It seems like a good frequency to start finding these relics a little bit easier or a little bit clearer. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, Craig. For those of you guys that have the Equinox.
Well, I pretty much go out every day to test the Equinox out, and I was testing out the new iron bias stuff, and I was looking on a Vista guy that was doing, and he was saying that plates that he was at, he couldn't use the multi because of the interference it was given, and he started switching to the signal frequency and found that he could hunt no noise. Especially on the power lines and stuff. So I thought, I try something new all the time, trying to eke some more targets out of my yard.
Yeah.
And it's been like 2.5 years, so, it's harder to do. But day before yesterday, I went ahead and switched to 15 kilohertz, and I swept for about maybe 20 minutes in the area where I found a lot of Tomback buttons and stuff. Didn't find very much there, and then I went up a little bit higher in the yard, and I got this 25 signal, and I thought, wow, that is, it was pinging good in one direction, but it was a little bit softer in the other direction, but it was still, reading up high, and it had a good tone, so I thought that sounds good. So I started digging and hit this like layer of ash. It was like it must have been like some ashes that had been thrown out of a fireplace, or I don't know, a stove maybe or something. And the dirt was like real fine. It was like probably like ashes mostly. And anyway, when I opened the hole, I went over and it really came back a lot stronger. And then I dug down, I don't know, it was at least 9 inches, maybe even, it might even been close to 10, but I just kind of threw the dirt out of the hole, and it turned out to be this really crusty wheat penny. And finally, after soaking in peroxide for 2 days, I was able to see it's 1945, but I thought that was pretty cool. And then yesterday, I went out right behind I got a tiny little portion of my backyard right behind the my back door, between that and the shed, and had a lot of stuff in there. So I decided, I'll hit this pretty hard. I'll try it with a 15 kilohertz. First swing, right next to the door where I found a token, I got a high reading, and the heck did I dig? I can't remember now. Oh, I think I dug a top to a lantern, and it was real thin brass. And it had some ornate fancy on the side with it looks like it was silver, and that one read probably 22, 23. I got another signal a few feet away, and it read 25, and I was thinking, man, that's silver range.
Right.
Or definitely a penny or something. And I dug it looks like the back of a button. I don't know if it's old or not, but it has a square hole where the eyelet was.
Oh, is that what that? Because I saw a photo of that on.
Yeah,
I was wondering what that was. Some kind of coin, or those Chinese coins have that square hole in them, but it's not a coin, obviously. But
and I got two pieces of harmonica reeds that I was kind of shocked that I didn't hear those before.
Right.
But part of it is, the machine was running quieter in the EMI. I have a kind of a wire that runs from the house straight across to the back of my yard. That causes some problems too. But
it's funny about that, Craig. You're speaking about the EMI. Just to stop you just for a second, because some days I have no problem whatsoever with that. Other days I can be in the same spot and all of a sudden have these power lines and stuff and start having a problem with it. I don't know what causes that really. Maybe it's just the amount of electricity going through them, or I wouldn't think that'd change that much. But have you noticed that some days are better than others as far as that wire goes?
Not really. I know when I first started hunting the yard, especially like in the front side yard to the street, it was really bad, and they came in about a year ago or so and changed all the wires. And I noticed that it seemed like the EMI had gone down a bit, quite a bit actually. It's still there, but it wasn't as bad. And I was talking to one of the guys that was working on the lines one day, and he said, "Oh yeah, these new wires are insulated." He said those old wires are probably 25, 30 years old.
Well, that's why I figured they had shielding on or insulation thicker or something. Yeah.
But it's still a problem. But it's just something you deal with. The noise canceling is very good on the Equinox. I had the Explorer XS years ago, and it did an excellent job with the noise canceling.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pretty surprised that I couldn't quiet the bass down at all in the front yard. The good thing was it would, even though it was getting a lot of interference, as soon as it went over a target, it broke through the interference.
Right. Well, I've had that happen too with a couple other detectors. Other ones won't do that though. You can't run them at all. Well, not that you can't run them, but you're missing stuff because it is so, they're picking it up so strongly. I think a lot of that may have to do with the coil cable too that's on the detectors. The older ones are not shielded the same way as they are now. A lot of these there's like triple shielding and stuff. I don't know what their specs are on that part of it on these newer ones, but
I think it's more on the coil than the wire, because
right.
It's just an antenna at the end of it.
Yeah.
But it's a problem that you don't hear a lot of people talk about. But EMI can, I've got such a busy yard. You got to listen, and kind of pick out the good signals between the nails and stuff. And that's another thing I noticed, that when it gets quiet like that, then you suddenly pick up a signal that is in between two scratchy ones that sounds better. And I just try to, work, real slow. And if I get a signal, then I'll try it from different angles, see if I can, get a better, fix on it. But,
Right.
I basically, I couldn't believe how many, they weren't all great, stuff I dug, but they were all like high register stuff, like, that you would dig for coins and whatnot. And,
Right. Right.
And some of the, like the harmonica pieces read more like a nickel.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was going for,
Well, if you're missing
Yeah,
those things too, I mean, if you didn't get them before this, obviously the machine unmasked them because, that's one thing that's nice about your yard, Craig, is where you've hunted at. Well, you've hunted the whole thing many times with many different detectors, and it just shows, these new programs are. It's like pulling out another, thread of information out of the yard. I mean, it's non-ferrous stuff. It's old.
yeah, I'm digging stuff right next to old plugs. It's
Right.
crazy. I dig a button out of one a while back, about a week or so ago. It was like a blazer button. It was
Right.
metal. Reading 25 though, and I dig it out of another hole. That I would have heard that signal.
Yeah.
And I didn't before. So I was using dropping the iron bias into the negative range. And a lot of people go, "Oh, well, dig a lot of iron," but it unmasks even more. I was reading in Clive Butner's book that the machine has programs in it to try to identify coin-shaped objects.
Right.
And if it's masked, then it doesn't. It has a harder time. But if you open it up, then it starts reading those. Targets mixed in with the iron as good, but you will dig. Probably dig more iron too.
Right.
But if you have a spot that that was really good and it's not yielding anymore, kind of like my yard, then if you go in and use these techniques, you can still pop stuff out. And it's amazing what I've done with the iron bias and the new software update. Is really, it's amazing how it's. And I just started using this 15 kilohertz. I didn't even. Now I got to hunt the whole yard again.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Gavin's on here saying he used to switch to 15 kilohertz with the Nox to check mainly for bottle caps. It used to make them sound scratchy on FE, but now with the FE2, you don't have to do that. It picks them up or picks them out pretty much right away, which is what you're using F2, right? FE2.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, yesterday I was using FE at what was I using it at 6, I think.
Right.
I was running a little bit into the iron range, but I just listen. This machine's got a lot of nuances to it, and it seems like signal with just one signal frequency. A lot of times it's good if you're in an area where there's not a lot of iron and nails and stuff in the ground, like a busy area.
Right.
If it's not as busy, then the signals come through really good in the multi. But as I was finding out, I was getting like the machine was just pulsing all over the place on iron. And it gets kind of annoying till you got to concentrate.
Well, I wonder with the 40 kilohertz, that's the high range on the frequency. With those eagle buttons that are gold gilded and stuff like that, do you think that would be because it's a higher frequency? For as far as gold's a low conductor. Do you think it would be able to pick out maybe another couple buttons out of the yard if they're the eagle buttons? I don't know if that would work or not, but
when I first got the machine, I took it up to the spot up the street, and I tried 20 kilohertz one day, and I got a, I got this, only got one signal with it that was good, and it was banging, and it was an area where it was a lot of iron in the ground around it, and I got a nice, fairly big flat button. But
Yeah, I was thinking maybe those nickels you were digging like a buffalo and everything else. Well, they're lower conductors, if I remember right. The nickel is whether that would help. And you can get guys too, and it's something that maybe some of you newer people out there that detect uh, things you got to keep in mind. If you have multiple items in the ground, like you have I don't know, a penny and a piece of brass and a piece of iron, and they're all in close proximity to each other, your VDI numbers may not uh, be stable, but you'll have those high tweaks in there. And if it's a repeatable one, you may be worth digging up just to kind of see what you're dealing with. And if you find multiple targets, you'll know what that nuance is or whatever. You'll know what you're listening for versus just a piece of iron junk that's uh, whatever getting in the way more often than not. And that's what I was doing
yeah, it's
over at
like
that news site. I mean, I get those, and I'm gonna dig this because there's a lot of stuff here, So
it's like the deeper targets. Sometimes they'll bounce between a couple numbers,
hmm
but if it watch the VDI number and listen, and if those VDI numbers keep consistent, bouncing between those three, maybe two or three numbers, and that's probably a good target. It's just the machine's
right.
having trouble, IDing it that deep.
And even if you're only getting one direction too, you might that item might be sitting just right when you came at that direction, and but if you turn halfway and swing the coil, you might lose it totally. And in your yard, Craig, I know you do this because there's stuff there. It's just you're unmasking stuff. Whereas in like a field or something like that, you wouldn't really worry so much if you don't have a lot of targets. It probably is a piece of junk. So it's kind of user discretion. Um,
I mean,
and that,
there's rarely a hole that I dig that I don't find 1 to 5 nails into the hole.
right, that's what I've been dealing with.
It's. I mean, that's what I've been dealing with all since I first started digging here.
Right.
I mean, it's just unbelievable. I know I've dug at least 2,000 nails up. Because after I get the target out of the hole, I always clean the hole. I
Right.
dig. I use a pinpointer to just pull everything out I can, and I figure down the road I can maybe I can pick another signal out that.
It's like the ground gets settled
bad.
again, or the halo, whatever you want to call it, the halo effect. There may be another target. You can't get it right now, but once that soil gets settled, and maybe it rains once or twice, and that soil gets packed down, and all of a sudden, bam, there's another target there that you just couldn't pick up. It's almost
Well,
like.
it's like
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
it's like yesterday morning. I got up and it was raining like crazy, and I guess it rained for about 5 hours, and then it was just black. It's like God. It's like the great flood's getting ready to come or something. But all of a sudden, I'm sitting here watching YouTube, and I look, it's bright blue sky, not a cloud in the sky, and it was about maybe 2:30. So I thought, man, I got to get ready and get out there.
Yeah.
So it was like probably 75 degrees with a 30-mile-an-hour wind. So it was just beautiful. But the ground was just, very damp. As far down as I dug a couple holes, as deep as a foot, because it was iron down that deep. But, the ground was just perfect, as far as the moisture. It wasn't soaking wet. It was just, it was just moist. It was easy.
Right. Well, soil moisture. We've talked about that. Oh gosh, several times, especially a year or two ago. Soil moisture and EMI and all these things play into the you finding stuff. I mean, some days, we used a detector where if you found a deep whisper target, you would use the tone, or you'd use the uh, uh, well, mostly tone would probably adjust. We would adjust out to see what tone came out the best, as far as on the Bliss tool. And some of them, it would tune in better. And if you try to turn it where you would normally hunt at, it would let go. It wouldn't be as strong. And that's just with the tone. It really has nothing to do with sensitivity or threshold or anything like that. It was just the way that the soil moisture allowed the metal detector to grab the signal or sound off. And if you did that, you would set it there the whole day, because obviously the area you're hunting probably has the same soil moisture, so to speak. So we would do that.
I've been in situations where you had like a torrential downpour where the ground got so wet that you couldn't even hunt because it falls so much. I remember I had the Explorer one time, and I went over to my friend's yard around the corner in Alexandria, where I found bullets and stuff in his yard, and we went out there, and we couldn't even hunt. I mean, we were, the ground was just tossing like crazy. It was just saturated with water.
Well, Gavin's asking a good question too. Go ahead, finish what you're saying, but Gavin has a question for you. But go ahead.
I had that happen up in Stafford, and the guy I was with got all upset because the machines wouldn't work, and I said, the ground is steaming. The water is so, the ground was so soaking wet. It was like a barrier under the soil.
Right.
You just couldn't break through it, and I tried to explain it to him, but the guy's an idiot. I saw the guy the other day. He's in the Deep Tech now, and he did a little video, and he was at this kind of ice house or something, and he dug this token up, and I noticed it was a Gold Rush token, California Gold Rush token. Mm-hmm. He dug that 4 years ago with me, probably near that same site.
Oh, man.
The same token that, so I was sitting there laughing. I was like, God, he's still doing that stuff.
Oh, is that who I think it is, right?
Yeah.
Oh, geez, I tell you. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It just, once you dig something, it's dug. You don't keep on posting it up. But at any rate, yeah, it's Gavin was asking here why there's so many yards or nails in your yard, and Craig's yard switched occupation between north and south. 125 times or something like that, wasn't it, Craig?
Yeah.
And plus, he has Colonial.
It switched. Like the headquarters for the both armies was right up the street, like a block away or less.
Right. So he has.
It's actually an inn that's the oldest inn in the working inn in the United States, and Wayfair Inn. But the placemates at headquarters at both armies agreed that they wouldn't burn it down or destroy it. It changed hands 131 times, and they had a reenactment, like one block parallel to my Main Street, Church Street, and that was Main Street back in the old days, and that's where a lot of skirmishes were, and they did a reenactment where they had a running battle between the Confederates and the Yankees,
right.
Reenactors up and down that street. And my friend Steve told me that there's bullet holes in a lot of those houses up there, bullets. And some people, I guess, found bullets in the bullet holes, but the bullet was gone. And I was laughing. I said, yeah, people went up there with a knife and probably carved it out.
Yeah.
And I heard some people actually bought bullets to stick back in the holes.
Oh. Yeah.
The other thing is there's right across the street from me is a historical marker that talks about the colonial fort that's like half a mile from my house, and maybe not even quite that far, but people started coming up into this valley in the probably 1740s. And my county was Kima County, I think it was 1758 or something like that. So it's, this area was great for farming. Well, not farming, but, grazing.
Right. Right.
Buffalo grazed here for 10,000 years, and their poop formed all the ground is all from their poop in the valley. And so it's really rich soil. It's neutral. There's hardly any mineralization. It's all limestone. There's rock outcroppings all over the place. So I'm in what's called the northern Shenandoah Valley.
Mm-hmm.
George Washington actually came up here in 1755, leading some militia, and the French were paying the Indians for scalps, for the settlers down this way. So they were being harassed, and like the fort, this guy won't let anybody go in the woods to see the fort, or of course, metal detected. It's probably been metal detected before, but I'd like to see what it looks like. But supposedly it had bolt holes in it so they could shoot through the holes.
Right. Sounds about right.
But he basically he came up. George Washington came up here with a militia and just kind of went after the Indians for a while to kind of give the settlers some ease their try to get them out of the way so people would be safer. But this was a wild area, and right next door to me, there's a cabin inside the house, and I think it dates back probably to 1740.
Mm-hmm.
But I think all along this street, I mean, there was probably little cabins, and there's several houses that are from the like 1850s, even 1920s that have cabins and have been embedded, and they just pulled around the cabin that was there. And you wouldn't even know it except for you see this big chimney, on the outside of the house. But just there's so many square nails, it's just unbelievable. There are modern nails too, but it's just it's almost like a blanket of nails in my yard.
Yeah, well, it's like your house up there in Alexandria was the same way. I mean, like a minefield of nails, and I deal with it down here too. I've always liked, Craig. I know you're pretty much the same way I am. You don't mind a trashy site. We consider trash just a lot of just mismatch this and that, nails, this, because it shows the activity and there's good stuff in there. It just takes a little bit of patience and an understanding of what you're hearing. It's not something we would suggest anybody to, you go out and buy a metal. Oh, good.
You got to go slow, and sometimes I've gotten signals that sounded good in one direction, just total crap in the other direction.
Right.
It turned out to be good because, I take a chance. If I hear something in the signal, I go ahead and dig it. And I think over a long time, it's accumulated. My ear it builds up your ear as far as listening. What I think that's more important than the BDI numbers. But
well, it is. I believe that wholeheartedly. Your ears are more sensitive to change than your eyes visually seeing stuff, and
sometimes I'll get a signal on the Equinox that it'll sound higher than the meter reading, and then when I get it out of the ground, it'll read higher on the meter.
Mm-hmm.
So, not always. The coin might not be flat; it might be slightly on edge. There's all kinds of factors,
scenarios, yeah.
And people go, "Oh, I don't want to dig that signal. It might be junk." And I go,
so what?
If you look at a lot of the YouTube channels, Quarter Hoarder and Jason and the Hoover Boys and the Stealth Diggers, a lot of these groups, they go and they dig a lot of iron, but they dig it all, and they get a massive amount of trash. But then you look at the good stuff they got, and you go, wow, you know. So, you know, if you don't dig trash, you're not getting it all, you know.
Yeah, you're not. Well, that's what we have always said. You don't dig trash, you're not going to get treasure. I mean, just the really good stuff. You got to get it out of the way, if anything else. So.
And you know, there's plenty of iron artifacts that are you know, relics. I mean, you know, there's little buckles, there's all kinds of stuff, tools.
And I dig them at my site. I mean, look at I'm digging a stirrup that I actually had a guy look at.
Yeah, I mean that's a nice artifact. You know,
heck yeah, I'll take those all the time. I mean, they're it's probably, and he's thinking it's between 1820 something to 1850. You know, he thinks it's earlier. It looks more like an 1812 stirrup, except that it doesn't have the adornments on it and stuff like that. But it could have been a plantation version, whatever. But I mean, I knew it was iron when I dug it. I mean, obviously, it's gonna. I was using a bliss tool. It come through one direction, not the other. But it was such a big target. I lifted my coil off the ground. I was a foot above it. I really thought it was just going to be a chunk of steel. Had no idea what it was going to be. The horse bit was the same way. But I knew, hey, I want to see I want to date this site. I need to dig all this stuff, and look how big they are. Now I'll go back here in a couple of days or whatever, and it's going to open up more signals down in that hole once that ground settles and stuff. Relics, saving history. I mean, iron. They used iron long before they did a lot of this other stuff, anyways. So if you're finding iron, you're going to find other stuff too. But get the big stuff out of the way. It just makes it's just good sense to do that. And so I posted a couple of pictures up what I found the first day, and that's the good stuff. It didn't show. I found some like stove parts. From the old wood burning stoves or heaters, whatever you want to call them. Just some nails. I mean, I dug a pocket watch cover this last time, probably about the size of a $50, a little bit bigger. And I got it, I dig a nail out. There's another nail, and then I pull out the pocket watch cover. Then I pull out a few more nails, and so it was right in the midst of that. But it was such a modulated signal. I knew it had to be something non-ferrous down in that hole. I didn't know maybe it was just a chunk of copper wire or whatever. That's another thing too. When you guys go over wire, like copper wire, aluminum wire, it gives you a weird signal. At least with my detectors, it gives a strange, almost like a junky signal. Sometimes if it's like about a piece about 5-6 inches long that's bent and stuff like that, don't overlook that because it. J hooks and stuff like that from the Civil War. I don't know how those read up, Craig, on some of your detectors. I've never dug one myself, but the J hooks, because they're brass or I think they're brass, right? Or are they copper? I think they're brass.
They're all brass.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to give you a weird. It may give you a weird signal because of the shape of it, really, more than anything else. All the bends in it and stuff. Don't overlook those signals.
There's a couple different
styles.
Parts.
Right.
Triangle, and then there's the J hook, and I think a couple other little parts. You also find like rivets, brass rivets.
A lot of brass rivets.
But a lot of them will have leather still on them. I was in this one area one time. Three of us went to this camp, and one guy went up on top of the hill, and all he found was a piece of lead. I'd been there before, and I had never hunted between the two camps. There was like a little valley between them. And Mike McAdams and I had started hunting there, and I must have dug 20 some knapsack parts along the side of this hill.
Mm-hmm.
And it had 8 buttons or something like that. And had maybe 4 bullets. And I think McAdams got, I think he got a few knapsack parts, but he got like, it was 13 buttons. One was a Michigan, and I think 1 bullet. And it was So that there was so much iron in the ground in that area. You can just imagine that what happened was probably a super windy day or something, and these guys, instead of being up on the hill where the camp was, they kind of went down in the valley between them to get out of the wind.
Right.
And
right. Makes sense.
And they were kind of laying up against the hill and not down in the muck, where where it was probably wet. So they were hanging out on the side of the hill there. The guy that he was up on the other hill, and he came down, and he had a fit, because he took all this stuff and he hadn't gotten anything.
Mm.
So it's just some people walk right, they'll walk right by the relics, getting to the camp, and there's other spots. Usually, if you're in a area where the soldiers camp, they had picket posts surrounding that camp, usually up on hills and stuff, and they'll be on the they won't be on the very top. They'll be on the they call the military crest, which is they'll be just down below the top where you can't see their silhouette from afar. And usually there'll be relics all in a line right at that spot. And you won't go all the way to the very top. You swing and you won't find anything. And then you go down a little bit and there's just stuff everywhere. So that's another thing to look for if you're into, if you a relic hunter. A lot of times, there's on the high hills around the camps. That's kind of lookouts. You stay there the night usually, or through the day, and then they would muster out back to the camp. They'd bring a bunch of other people in. But I've found some places like that. A lot of times don't have a lot of bullets, but they'll have tons of buttons, heavy buckles, and all kinds of little brass pieces usually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm actually. I talked to what I was telling you about. I talked to the one fellow over there at Dade Battlefield. We were at that Halloween thing and everything, and he was telling me that some of the Indian villages and stuff like that. I've seen maps and I have them on maps down here, and of course the villages aren't there anymore or whatever. But they, the settlers. That's what I'm after finding. Buttons. Buttons are really good to date a site. Buttons and rivets or parts. Any kind of. That's why we dig iron too, because it can date a site pretty easily. But he actually is one of the reenactors, the Seminole Indian reenactors that they actually horseback and ride through the woods, everything else like that. But he's from down here. He's probably about 28, 29 years old, something like that. But we got to talk, and I'd met him once before at a meeting or whatever, and we got to talk, and it was kind of funny. I was asking, I can't pronounce the name of these Indian villages. I'm just not, I get tongue-tied too much, and I'd butcher it. But there was one that was out near where I'm detecting now, and I was trying to figure out where it was located at. Turns out that he's actually knows one of the, I guess, he's an archaeologist, but he does investigations on villages, Indian villages, and he did one down the road for me into Hernando County. But he was telling me, he goes, yeah, well, there used to be an old fortune teller, and he started talking about these different. My wife's family is from way back, and her great grandmother was a fortune teller, and it was on Fortune Teller Road out there near Webster, Bevel's Corners area. And he was, well, yeah, I know where that is because that's part of my wife's family. He goes, really? He goes, well, that's so-and-so's family too. And I'm like, yeah, it's funny how that works. But I ended up finding, he said there was an Indian village out there. And of course, back in the day, some of that area, even, north in Lake Panasoffkee, and there was so much activity, so many things were going on, and they built over top of this stuff. And that stuff has been gone. We were talking about how many things in our town that you'll never be able to detect again. They just put a 3-story car garage by the courthouse where I used to detect, a park on the other part of it, and I found hundreds and hundreds of relics and old coins and just losing spots so fast. But the place I'm hunting at now in Central Florida with the tree that's God, it's 29 plus feet around. We're finding the old stirrups and stuff. Well, he thinks I found definitely found the plantation, the main plantation in that area, but that's not the only one. It's right near the cattle market, Craig, and that was the cattle auction. Now it's within, I'll say within, we're going to say within 20 miles, but it's closer than that probably. But that was the main thing in this area: cattle, gambling, cattle, and just the Wild West type stuff down here. And you don't really hear that part of the history. A lot of people think Florida's just palm trees and beaches, and but there was Spanish down here. He's found Spanish items pretty much laying on the ground. You get into the deep woods and stuff like that down here, the swamps and everything else. What used to be water covered 50 years ago or 60 years ago is not water covered anymore. I mean, we joke around about down here how they said, certain areas are they're not flood zones anymore. Well, Mother Nature wants it, she's going to take it back. But now, that being said, a lot of the places that were underwater aren't anymore. They used to go to water supply. So sometimes you find items laying right on top of the ground. I mean, I've heard of people, they scuttled cannons in the water and everything else. The Seminole Indians were, it's a melting pot of Indians and African Americans, obviously, the slaves from back then. But you needed water supply. And because the water's receded so much, now you're finding stuff, 100 feet, 200 feet from where the water used to be, where compared to where it is now. Like finding riverboat D-shackles and stuff like that, at least, a couple 100 yards from the river, which is kind of weird, but, that's where I found it at. So, bouncing around with these different areas, you just never know what was what. Sites change so much unless you have stone walls or basements or something to give you an idea, monuments or something like that to give you an accurate location on some of these things. It might be one right underneath your feet, and that's what Craig deals with. Having a place that probably had even colonial settlements on it. Obviously, you're finding flat buttons and dandy buttons and this and that on your property too.
It's like the house across the street from me is 1796. And this town was incorporated in 1796. There was, people here. There was a lot of commerce that went down Main Street. They built this basically a highway back then, all the way through Virginia. It opened up to southern Virginia and all along the valley. So, people just started flooding into this area. Virginia has always been an agricultural site. The valley's been, a lot of agriculture here and cattle and horses. It's just, it's got just dirt. And farmers started, just flocking out to this area because there was this free land out here. It's wide open and people farms, make a living.
Absolutely.
But they kind of this highway that went down through the valley, and people. They used to have toll houses every 5 miles along this for this stuff, and some of the people became rich, collecting the tolls.
Yep.
But so it was pretty funny. Every 5 miles, you had to stop and pay the toll. I don't know how much it was back then, but
back then too. I mean, you talk about the cost of living back then. It's just amazing that you find and I think that's why I don't find a ton of silver from way back. I find Indian heads and stuff like that, but. You have to think about even in 1900, a pound of bacon was 9 cents, Craig, or something like that. I mean, it was
probably,
and you think about the 1800s, it might have been 2 cents a pound or whatever. You know, the cost of living was so, you know, they didn't have tons of money to be dropping and stuff. I mean, if you find a silver dollar, which Craig has found several of them, I've never been fortunate enough to get my coil over one yet, but I mean, that's a big money from back then. I mean, if you had a dollar, I mean, shoot, they probably weren't even getting paid what, I don't even know what they were getting paid a week back then, Craig. I mean, it wasn't much.
Yeah, it depends on. It's like, the colonial places I dug on the Potomac. It was funny. You would find more cut silver than you would big copper coins.
Right.
And there was there was Alexandria and then the Dumfries Port. That's where all the Spanish galleons were coming up the Potomac from the Chesapeake Bay to trade, and they wanted tobacco and things like that, and they would, trade their silver coins for it. There's actually a couple maps where a long time ago they kind of traced where these Pistarines were, being found, and they kind of found that after they left there, they started being finding the cut pieces.
Right.
But that was a big coin back then. It was a 2 real, but it was probably worth over $1, as far as money. And so they would cut these coins into pieces because they needed change. That was a lot of, you probably didn't even spend a whole 2 real on anything
right.
back then. But they had trouble getting the copper coins. King George II wouldn't allow the coins to be in, so most of the ones you find are counterfeits. I found most of the ones I found I did find some King George II's, but found mostly King George III's. The Spanish real, they just circulated worldwide. I mean, the Spanish were trading all over the world back then.
Right.
It's pretty amazing that they actually, came up the Potomac River and galleons, back then to trade.
Yeah, the Spanish were all over the place. So, down here in Florida, out there in New Mexico, Arizona, California. I mean, they were just, it seems like they were everywhere at one time or another.
Well, they were before the British defeated them, the Spanish Armada, and all that. They were ruling the world back then. I've done, a lot of the Spanish coins. Some of them, the earliest ones came from Spain, but then they started coming from like Mexico and South America. They had mints all over South America and Central America and Mexico City. So, you can look at when you dig a real, a lot of times it'll have this mint mark on it.
Right.
And the Sayers mark and things like that. So
I'm just going to call you, Craig, when I find one after I get done with my hardest stroke and falling over. That a lot more about these things. I haven't dug one yet. It's just driving. I had that 4 real, but you couldn't make anything out on it. But that's been a while ago. Like I said, it'd be like finding a breastplate down here. I mean, it'd be freak you out. It'd be a really cool find. You never know though. I mean, guys have dug them before down here. So
first one I found, and I'd read a lot of stories in Treasure magazine about guys finding them, and I was thinking, I'll never find one of those. That'll be hard to find. And I was down in Stafford with a guy, and we were kind of searching this area, and I found a flat button with a piece of thread still on it, and it said London on the back. And I thought, I showed it to the other guy, and he said, "Man, that's really old." And so I saw this flat area at the bottom of the hill and went down there, and I saw 2 old dig holes, and I went over there and I swung, and right between them I got a really good signal, and I dug down maybe 2 inches, and when I dug it up I noticed that the dirt was just totally burnt. It was just black, and it was this. It was a 2 real cut, a bit cut from an 8 real, and it was like in mint shape. I couldn't believe it. I sat there. I was just sitting there on my knees looking at this thing for about 5 minutes. I couldn't even move. I just was like turning the thing over in my hand. But oh my God. And my friend came down and says, "What did you find?" And I said, "Man, you won't believe this." He had a fit. He was one of those guys that,
yeah, competition.
I'd always congratulate him, but he would never, he'd always get pissed off. If I said something good, but that's what some people are. I'd rather, take the high road. When somebody digs something really good, it's super exciting. I know how it feels, and there's. I think it's the right thing to go over and say, "Wow, that's congratulations, that's a great find," But some people that just, they it doesn't matter. They want whatever you found.
You get a few, and Craig and I have recently seen a few posts up there, and I actually sent it to Craig. It's 99% of us out here, have good etiquette. We're good ambassadors to the hobby, and everything else. But you always have that 1% that will do something really dumb. And I saw it. I'm not going to even say, it doesn't really matter what Facebook page or anything like that, where they caught the guy in a cemetery, and it was ridiculous that
he actually was when he walked up, he was filling a hole on top of a veteran's grave.
Yeah, and a child's grave, digging a hole in front of it.
He dug it right next to the stone, at this child's grave.
And this is not an old cemetery. This is one that was recently used. People go to. It was like going to your, the local cemetery and just getting your metal detector out and metal detecting. It was stupid. I just couldn't believe it.
Like a 20-year-old cemetery, maybe 30 years old, but
yeah,
there's
no
probably
respect
points there, but they're not going to be anything good. But and a lot of people, and I'm the same way. I don't want to dig in a cemetery.
No, it's disrespectful.
It's just creepy. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's just not right. And
the only time I could ever see anybody doing it is if you were actually, we have a few cemeteries that you come across out in the middle of nowhere, and if you're trying to, find where if you have, even with archaeologists, you're trying to get information, trying to save history, that kind of thing. I could see it, legitimately, legally to do it. But this guy was just, it was like he was going to a park. He's out there just bebopping around, and a guy saw it and he videotaped it.
And he wasn't.
And he's like,
you should have seen how messy his holes were. I mean, there was like loose dirt all around it. And the guy was supposedly, it said Dr. Robert or something on the back of his license plate. So I'm wondering if he wasn't a doctor or something. But the guy was so arrogant. He's like, "Oh, what's wrong?"
There's no sign here saying I can't metal detect. And there was, he's just being, and the guy told him, he goes, I'm a detectorist also. The guy that was filming it, that saw the guy, and they actually had the worker that worked the cemetery, that, is responsible for it. 20 years he's been doing that job. And this guy was, that they caught was just like, well, I can do this. And they told him, we're gonna call the police out here. Well, call them if you want to. I can be out here. And it went through me like a knife. But I tried to be nice on her, because obviously the guy that filmed it, my hat's off to him, because I think I would have, probably said a whole lot more than he did. It was just, trying to give everybody a bad name that is in this hobby, and we've worked really hard everybody has over the last, 10 or 15 years, especially, about, talking about etiquette and about filling in holes, about where to hunt and where not to. I mean, when in doubt, never, ever, ever go to a cemetery to metal detect, guys. I mean, it's just to me, it's common sense, but to you new people, it's not a place you want to go to. I actually...
Yeah, it's the same thing when you're on a protected battlefield.
Or a state park or whatever. If you're not supposed to be there, if you don't see just because you don't see a sign saying no metal detecting doesn't mean, you know, you're supposed to be there. Use common sense. You can get yourself into a hell of a lot of trouble. This guy apparently, they did call the law out. The police were very upset about it. They got him because they had his license plate number and everything, and he's getting prosecuted, which is, I guess just because he was so cocky about it. Just, some people are like that. That 1% tries to give everybody else a bad name, but yeah, it kind of shocked me a little bit. But when you're in this hobby long enough, you see some of this stuff happen. We've had a few instances down here and several other places, and it's not rampant or nothing. But just use good common sense and don't be afraid to speak out. You're protecting your hobby, something you love to do. So don't be afraid to say something if you see something going on like that, because before you know it, you'll lose permissions left and right, and you didn't even have nothing to do with it. At least in your area. But yeah, I just told the guy I was glad he brought, he was proactive and he got out there and did something about it.
Yeah, it's like over the years I've even filled in the holes on the construction sites, where
oh yeah,
you don't have to do a great job, but fill the damn hole in. It just doesn't look good. And I've had people say, "Oh, it doesn't matter." It does matter.
It does matter. It's principle. It's etiquette.
And it's the same thing if you're in the middle of nowhere in the woods. Don't leave holes. It's just, I don't know. You got to have your own integrity.
Well, I should have got pictures of it, Craig, or videos of it where I went detecting with Mike Miller and Mark Hoover over in Croom. It was a place actually a friend of mine owns a property, gave us permission, and he says just fill in your holes because I had a guy looking for arrowheads or whatever, digging for arrowheads, and he left all his holes open. And we're talking about 3-foot deep holes. That's dangerous. I don't care, if somebody falls into that, especially if they're out in the middle of nowhere, breaks their leg, they're stuck there, they die. You can't get out, whatever. It's just fill in your holes. It's not. I do it in pastures. There's holes everywhere, but if I dig a hole, I'm filling it in. If somebody breaks an ankle, I've lost permissions because. Or wouldn't gain permission at a park of all things, because another detectorist came through, left a hole open, lady walks through, breaks her ankle. Before you know it, no metal detectors. No metal detecting at all. So you just screwed it for everybody. Just common sense, etiquette.
It's probably, I don't do beach hunting, but it's probably the same thing on the beach.
I fill in holes on the beach. Unless you're at the water line where the surf's coming in. Fill in your other holes. Just kick dirt. Kick some sand. It takes 2 seconds, and and I've walked behind people that are a couple hundred yards up there, and they leave every hole open. It's like, come on, guys. All these little kids running around and people jogging and everything else. Just kick some sand in there. You don't. You're just saving yourself a headache or saving us a headache to do that. But
well, you're also saving the hobby.
Yeah. Well.
It's like. Out of sight, out of mind. If you don't have holes that people can see and they do you were there, then they don't even, you don't even come into...
Stay below the radar, in other words.
Yeah.
Don't be in the crosshairs. But anyway... go ahead.
I've actually filled other people's holes in because I didn't want to lose a sight.
Yeah. We've done that to a lot of the hunts we've been at, Craig. There's always that one person that doesn't fill in holes at one of these hunts, and everybody's mindful of it. We had a Florida Hunt 4 hunt, and there was a couple that were, leaving holes open or something. Oh, I can't remember if it was that or CW. I don't think it was CWPPO. Anyways, it was one of the hunts I was at, and everybody was saying, I found a couple open holes, but I kicked dirt in them. So I was like, okay, that's cool. At least we don't tick off any, landowners or anything like that and ruin it for anybody else that wants to hunt that place. Leave it nicer than what you found it. Leave it cleaner than what you found it. Obviously you're cleaning it up because you're pulling out scrap metal and, wire and everything else. And just, tell them, say, hey, is it okay if I put it by the fence pole if I can't carry it out of there? And usually they'll say yes, or a central location. But when in doubt, carry it out. You want to get it off their property. Show them what you're finding. Say, I found some, the last place I hunted, I found this like cast iron wire kind of thing. I don't know what the heck it was, but it was a whole clump of it, Craig. A cow or a horse gets caught up in that, and it was only like an inch down on the ground, so it wouldn't take them much more in a rainstorm. Here comes a cow, kind of rooting around and gets it caught around his leg, and you know, hopefully nothing happened, but he could have ripped up his leg, saving the farmer, the rancher from having to doctor on a cow. I mean, he was happy to see that I got it out of there. So, you see glass, get it out of the way, pick it up. Don't cut yourself on it, but a lot of these sites you'll find tons of glass. And if you get, obviously shards sticking out of the ground, everything, you got to be careful. Don't cut yourself, but get it out of there so nobody else gets hurt on it. But kind of want to get off that subject, Craig, because that can go on and on. But it's just primarily, if it seems right to do it. And if it seems not right to do it, don't do it. Common sense. But I was actually messaging back and forth, a couple times with Dwight Collin from New Age Goonies. He has one of those new Simplexes, Craig. I guess he has his already. He's been hunting with. I was watching a couple of videos. He actually had a little beach video that he was showing how the lights work on it and everything. And I just asked him, I said, "Is it worth it, Dwight?" And he goes, "I love it." So I'm like, okay, I think I'm pretty much going to pull the trigger on it as soon as I'm able to. I just can't. You can't get them anywhere. Well, I guess Calico had them, and they did their first pre-order. I guess they've gotten done with the first pre-order. Now they're on the second pre-order. I did call Evan up there and talk to him on Friday. I think it was Thursday or Friday, Craig, and he's expecting to get his shipment in sometime. He says hopefully before 2020. I don't know what the backlog is on these machines, but yeah, I told him, I said, man, whenever you get them in, let me know. I'll buy one. I'm ready to get one just because of what I'm seeing and what I've been hearing. They actually have a new software update. You can get it from, if you're fortunate enough to have one right now. I don't know when this came out. I think it was just recently, within days ago. It's the update is the software update V2.01. They actually can get it from the NoctaDetector.com website, and the updates made was the wireless connection improvements. The wireless connection quality has been improved. The pairing process on the wireless headphone has been simplified. You can download the new instructions from their site. A wireless icon has been added to the screen. Let's see here. The save function. This was a good one, Craig. It said the detector will now have all save all settings automatically once you turn your detector off and on again, except for the ground balance, frequency shift, and LED flashlight on and off, which makes sense. I mean, you ground balance every time you turn the machine on or what have you. The other factory default function has been added. To revert back to factory defaults, please follow the steps. Turn the detector on, pressing the power button. Once the Simplex logo appears on the screen, press the hold down button setting and, well, a couple other things, and it will reset back. And you'll hear 3 short beeps. It also has a frequency shift that's been added in this new update, optimizing and drop to 3 channels. So you have an F1, F2, F3. F2 is the center frequency. So I don't know if that's the same as the Equinox or the same theory or not, Craig, but it sounds like...
yeah, it looks like they're doing some things the same. Like they got a park, I think, and a field and stuff,
right,
on there. So there's some of those things that are very similar.
Yeah, they have a field, park, and a beach, and then they have an all metal mode. Now the Simplex.
I hear that.
Oh, good.
I hear that VDI is totally different. It's much lower in the numbers, I believe.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I don't know. It's let me see.
That takes some getting used to. I saw where Jason from Porter Order. He just ordered an Amphibio, and then he's also getting a Simplex. But he's been an AT Pro guy for most of the time, and he's got about 10 machines. But he Just that he ordered those two, and he's been trying the Amphibio, and he likes it a lot. So we'll see what happens on that one.
Yeah, it has a frequency shift, vibration mode, pinpoint, notch filters. It's only 12 kilohertz, but between anywhere between 12 and I don't know 15 to 18, somewhere in there is not bad. It's not as it doesn't have as many frequencies as the Equinox, but then again, you're talking about a machine that's well, I think they're selling for $339 with the wireless headphones. I think it's $299 without it. I mean, I just can't wait to get my hands on one of these, Craig. It's driving me nuts to, not have it already because because I think the potential's there, and I think that's what I asked Dwight. Is it worth looking at? Do you like it that much? And he loves his, and while we hunted with Dwight and Brian up there at one of the hunts in 2017, I think it was, or 15, can't remember now. These guys have been in the hobby for a long time too, or a longer amount of time, and they understand machines. But I guess Dwight, I think he's using the Amphibio, if I remember right, Craig, or he was.
And that's his main machine.
He really likes this Simplex. So.
But he usually, gets all the new machines and tries them out. Does a lot of live hunts. So he's got New Age Goonies as his site.
Yeah, on Facebook.
Gets off of uses Calico, but it's an intriguing machine, especially for the price. I hope it really is a good machine, and that's going to drive the price down in the future of all these other machines. The technology, there's going to be a lot of competition now.
Oh yeah, it's good though for the buyer. It's a buyer's market. You guys have a lot of options. You have a lot of choices now. I mean, you have for the last 10 or 12 years, anyways. But I mean, there's differences in these machines. Not knocking one or another. I mean, it's just pretty much what you want and what you need to add your arsenal. I mean, you might need an initial machine, a backup machine, a cleanup machine. You have a greater amount of possibilities. Plus, there's a lot of machines on the market that are used. So if you're new to the hobby, you have a possibility of rather than starting out with a really low end detector brand new, buy a mid range or even a high end detector for considerably less being used, and it helps out the guy selling it too, because he's selling it to buy another metal detector, so everybody's happy. Buyer, and it's going to get us more. I think it's going to really improve it over the next. Well, for as long as the circuitry is, Craig, when they're always updating the circuitry and coming out with new stuff and making it do different things.
Well, the other great thing is
cheaper.
All these machines are starting to come out with software updates,
right,
that improve the machine down the road. So that's great.
Yeah, you don't have to buy another one; just go do an update. Boom, done.
Yeah, it's like you almost have instead of having one machine, you almost have with the programs, you got 4 or 5 machines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with this Simplex, like even with Craig, the Simplex has a 3-tone audio. That's not bad. I mean, 3 tones is about. I mean, some people really like full tones and 5 and 6, and some of these machines you can make every VDI number have a different tone. I mean, but 3-tone is good. I mean, I don't know. I don't mind 3 tones. It's not a lot to keep up with. From what it sounds like, what I've heard in the videos, it's pretty well easy, and you can almost hear it has some nuance in it.
So, I know a lot of people. I like the 50 tones on the Equinox, but I know a lot of people don't. They say it's too confusing or something. They want. A lot of the guys run 5 tones.
4 tones or 5 tones, yeah.
One tone or 2 tones even. It's a lot of different things you can do with the machine. So
the way I've always thought about it with the, if you have a lower amount of tones, like if you only have a 2-tone or a 3-tone machine, and the other guys running 50-tone, I mean, really, you have information in each one of those tones. You have nuance in those tones. I think with a lower tone or lower number of tones, it may be more a little bit more easy to hear the nuance versus 50 tones where you have a lot of, it's just the way your ears hear, what you can wrap your mind around. With me, I don't like a lot of tones. I never have. Craig doesn't mind them because, you use the Deus and everything. You always had full tones on there and everything else. But then we use a machine like the Bliss Tool. It's one solid tone. That's it. But in that tone, you have so many nuances that it's talking to you like a multi-tone machine if you know what you're listening for. So.
I've heard it called target tone ID, and I kind of like that better than the visual, target ID myself. But
that's one thing.
I remember when I used the Explorer, I rarely looked at the meter. I always used the XY screen, but instead of the numbers. But most of the time I didn't even look at the meter. I'd hear that signal, that tone, and after a while I could almost tell you what I was digging in certain ranges. But if I went over silver, I knew it just about every time with that machine. But I knew other guys that used that machine. They didn't like the multi-tones, but she said, "Oh, it sounds like a synthesizer."
Right. Right. I don't know. So I guess some of the guys are getting booted back and forth, Craig, on the show here. Gavin keeps on getting booted back to the Coil show that the last show we did. I'm not sure what's going on with that, guys. I mean, we're not showing anything up here, and I'm sorry that's happening. I don't know.
They've done some software update or something.
Yeah. Craig, you were talking about how on the VDI thing, it does say 00 to 99 on target ID. So on that, and then the other thing was with the software update, it doesn't use Mac or whatever Apple. It doesn't have that on. It has Vista and Windows 7, 8, 9, and 10. So it may be one of those ones like the Deus where you can do it on a PC.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know for sure on that, but that's what it says.
That's true. I won't get one.
Yeah. Well, it just said. Gavin watched the update on the software, or the upgrade on the software, the video on it, and it's more involved than the Knox is. What you have to do, but that depends on what format or what platform they're using or whatever for their upgrade. You have to get a zip file. It's not a big deal. I mean, you download the zip file and you open it and you plug your machine in essentially and into your computer or whatever, and I guess you go from there. But I'll do a video on it. If I get one, I'll do that update and show you guys how to do it. But I think there's already
one thing I like
up there.
One thing I like about the Equinox is that update is so simple and it's so quick, and I can do it on my Mac. I don't have a PC and never have had one.
Right.
So that's going to be I probably won't be getting a Simplex.
Yeah, just send it down here to me, Craig. Pauline has an Alienware, but that thing that thing I don't have to worry about it. It's wicked fast. So I have my Mac. I mean, I've kind of grown into this Mac over the last 10 years. I like the Apple products. And I don't have an iPhone. I have I think it's an Alien offshoot. Not Alien, Android, but I don't get on Instagram like you do, Craig, and kind of post stuff up from my phone anyways. So see here. Gavin said something else here, and I can't read it right now, but we're getting up there about 8:15. We wanted to run a little bit longer because we didn't run that long we didn't run at all on Saturday night. That was kind of my thing. I'm trying to organize my schedule a little bit better, Craig. I tried to fit too much in 2 days, and just couldn't get back unless I had a supercharged vehicle, a plane. I need to get a Learjet. Maybe you guys will buy me one. I need a Learjet to make all my appointments. But we'll be on Wednesday morning and then Friday morning. We do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Saturday night, 8 p.m. And we will be doing a show next Saturday because I don't have anything planned, Craig, other than metal detecting. Unless I find a whole treasure chest full of gold coins, I'll be partying. But I'll probably do the show anyway. So we'll see how it goes. But thanks for listening. Be sure to like and follow the shows. There's several of them on Spreaker.com platform, and I think most of us are now all across iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcast. I mean, we're across the board now. I think most of us are, as far as like Relics Radio, Beyond Sight and Sound, All Metal Mode, Relic Roundup. They have a new Prospector show. That's kind of a neat one. Craig and I think Craig, you've listened to it too. They're out of California, I think, right, Craig? That Prospector Radio. Yeah, there's like 7 people on that show. It's kind of neat. I don't know how they do it because it gets hard enough for us to keep up with 2 or 3. But they do a good job. It's a little bit different format too, so check it out. And I guess we'll talk to you on Wednesday morning. So get out there, guys, if you can, and keep digging. God bless.